Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with number 11 in the series We're Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, from Ruy Lopez to Magnus Carlsen, which is a series about the strongest players of their era, not just the 16 official world champions, but all the players who were once the strongest player of their era. It started in the 16th century with Ruy Lopez de Segura. Yes, the Spanish opening is named after him. He was the strongest player of his era between 1560 and 1575. He was followed up by Leonardo da Cutri and then Paolo Boy, Alessandro Salvio and Gioacchino Greco. That's when Spain and Italy dominated the chess world. Then it went to France. Légal de Kermeur, François André Danican-Philidor, Alexandre Deschapelles and Louis-Charles Mahé de la Bourdonnais were the strongest players during the French era. Then the power of chess moved to England, when Howard Staunton was the strongest player. Then Adolf Anderssen from Germany and the great Paul Morphy from the USA. He beat everybody between 1858 and 1862. After Morphy, the World Championship was formalized and the first official world champion was Wilhelm Steinitz, followed by Emanuel Lasker, that's in red because this video is about Lasker. José Raúl Capablanca was the third world champion. Alexander Aljechin, Max Euwe, Michael Botvinnik, Vasily Smyslov and Misha Tal. Then we had Tigran Petrosyan, Boris Spassky, Bobby Fischer, Anatoly Karpov, Garry Kasparov, Vladimir Kramnik, Vishwanathan Anand, and the current world champion is Magnus Carlsen since 2013. As I said, this is the 11th video. You can see the first 10 videos in the link up here, also at the end of the video and in the description box underneath this video. As mentioned, we have arrived at Emanuel Lasker, the second official world champion. Lasker was born on December 24th, 1868 and passed away on January 11th, 1941 at the age of 72. He was the world champion for 27 years from 1894 to 1921, the longest reign of any officially recognized world champion in history. Apart from being the second official world champion, he was a mathematician and philosopher. And some more facts on the great man. He was born in Berlichen in Neumark in Germany, which is now Barlinek in Poland, the son of a Jewish cantor he was. A cantor is the person who sings and leads people in prayer in a religious service. At the age of 11, Lasker was sent to Berlin to study mathematics, where he lived with his brother Berthold, 8 years his senior, who taught him how to play chess. Berthold himself was among the world's top 10 players in the early 1890s. To supplement their income, Emanuel played chess and card games for small stakes, especially at the Café Kaiserhof in Berlin. Lasker made contributions to the development of other games as well. He was a first-class contract bridge player and wrote about bridge, Go and his own invention, Laska, a game Lasker had invented himself. Lasker was a research mathematician who was known for his contributions to commutative algebra. His philosophical works and a drama that he co-wrote received little attention. His contemporaries used to say that Lasker used a psychological approach to chess, and even that he sometimes deliberately played inferior moves to confuse opponents. But recent analysis indicates that he was ahead of his time and used a more flexible approach than his contemporaries, which mystified many of them. Being Jewish, Lasker had to flee Germany in the 1930s. He lived in England for a while and was then invited to live in Moscow in the Soviet Union by a chess lover. In 1937, Lasker and his wife moved to the USA, first Chicago and then New York. Lasker died of a kidney infection in New York on January 11, 1941 at the age of 72 in the Mount Sinai Hospital. And one of the other greats also died of kidney problems, and that of course was Bobby Fischer. Lasker was buried at the historic Beth Olam Cemetery in Queens in New York. This is a picture of his tombstone. Make sure when you're in New York to visit the great Lasker. Lasker played a total of 7 World Championship matches. He beat Steinitz to become the second world champion, then he beat Steinitz in the revenge match. then he beat Marshall, Tarash, he drew against Schlechter, but kept his title, then he beat Janowski and then lost 11 years later his title to Jose Raul Capablanca. The next video in this series will be about the great Cuban. You can see games from these matches in the playlist of the Carlsen Karana Countdown, where I covered all the 46 events for the World Championship. Again, I'll put a link up here. A few quotes about Lasker from the book My Great Predecessors from Garry Kasparov. Alexander Alyechin said, Lasker was my teacher and without him I could not have become who I became. The idea of chess art is unthinkable without Emanuel Lasker. Michael Botwinnik said, great was Lasker's role in the social recognition of chess, the realization of its usefulness. The game of chess eases our life struggle, he said. And Misha Tal said, the greatest of the champions was, of course, Emanuel Lasker. At the chessboard, he accomplished the impossible. He was an amazing tactician, winning games that were apparently quite hopeless. Nice quotes from Lasker's successors. It's time to play some chess. We're gonna look at a game that Lasker played in 1889 at the age of 20 in a tournament in Amsterdam, his first international tournament. Lasker was white and his opponent was Johann Hermann Bauer, and it was played on the 26th of August of that year, 1889. I'm using the analysis from Kasparov from his book My Great Predecessors. Lasker would finish this tournament in second place with 6 points out of 8 games behind the Englishman Amos Byrne. Lasker played f4 on the first move and Bauer played d5. Bauer was an Austrian chess master who has become famous mainly because of this game. He was 28 years old when this game was played and sadly passed away a year and a half later because of tuberculosis. e3 was played on the second move by Lasker, knight f6, and here Kasparov says that knight f3 is more accurate to stop the d5, d4 push. Lasker played b3 and now d4 is possible, but e6 was a choice from Bauer. Bishop b2, bishop e7, bishop d3, and here c5 is given by Kasparov as a good alternative for the move played in the game b6. Knight c3, bishop b7, knight f3. The queen's knight went to d7 and both players castled. Here knight e5 is given by Kasparov as an interesting option, but Lasker played knight e2 on its way to g3. c5 from Bauer, and Kasparov says knight c5 followed by knight takes d3 is the safer option for black. But he played c5, knight g3, queen c7, and now knight e5. That knight was taken, bishop takes, attacking the queen, and queen c6 with the idea of d5, d4, and black has a very strong battery on the diagonal, pointing at the g2 square. Queen e2 was Lasker's response, and Kasparov says this is a psychologically subtle move, both prophylactically defending g2 that way, and also threatening bishop b5, harassing the queen. Which in fact is a sham, says Kasparov, because the bishop is looking in quite the opposite direction at the h7 square. Here knight e4 is possible, knight d7 is possible with equal chances, analyzes Kasparov, but a6 was played to keep that bishop out of b5. And it's a loss of time. As Kasparov says, Bauer falls into the trap that was set for him. And now the fireworks start. Lasker played knight h5. Kasparov says, signaling the start of a ferocious storming of the king's fortress. It is amazing that black's position is already practically hopeless here after 14 moves. Bauer took the knight, and now he should not take back on h5 because then there is f5. And black is okay. Lasker did not take back on h5. He took on h7, the Greek gift. Bishop takes h7 check. Bauer took, and now Lasker took back on h5. King g8 only move, and now look at this move. Bishop takes g7 which is the only move, otherwise white is just material down. And Kasparov says this double bishop sacrifice is Lasker's patent. Bauer took, black has already lost, so he just takes the bishop and lets Lasker show how white wins this position. Queen g4 check, driving the king to the edge of the board. You cannot go to f6 because this is checkmate. So you have to go to the h-file and then rook f3, lifting the rook to deliver mate on the h-file. There's one way to get out of this, that's e5, with the queen protecting the h6 square. The only way to avoid mate, but it will cost black the queen, which is not the end of the world, yet, as he is 2 bishops up. Rook h3 check, queen interposed, and white won black's queen. But black has rook and 2 bishops for the queen. But now queen d7. Lasker must have seen this move when he played knight h5 on the 14th move, and this is the 22nd move. 8 moves ago he already saw this move. White now wins a bishop because of the double attack, and that way he will win the game. Bishop f6, queen takes, king g7, rook f1, and rook a to b8. Lasker is an exchange up and also 2 pawns. You can take on d5 here, that also wins, but Lasker must have wanted to make sure black's rooks would not become active. Kasparov gives this variation in his book, rook b to d8, queen f3, rook takes d2, queen g4 check, king h7, queen f5 check. The king has to go back to g7 to protect the bishop, and then f takes e5, also wins for white. But after rook a b8, Lasker did not take on d5, he played queen d7. Rook fd8 and queen g4 check. King went to the back rank and f takes e5. You cannot take because then there is queen f5 and the bishop is lost because of the checkmate threat on f7. So after f takes e5, Bauer played bishop g7 instead of taking on e5, and e6. Kasparov gives the remaining moves without commentary. Let's see what happened. Rook b7, you have to protect that poor f7 pawn. Queen g6. You cannot take the queen because of the pin. f6, rook takes, bishop takes, and queen takes. We check and attacking the rook, so the king has to go to e8. But then queen h8 check, king e7, and we have a skewer, winning a rook. And Bauer could have resigned here with a clear conscience, but he went on, takes a pawn on e6, which by the way is the first pawn of white's that gets taken on the 33rd move. That doesn't happen too often. White picks up the queen, rook d6, another pawn goes, d4, e takes, c takes, and there goes the passed pawn on its way to h8. d3, and Lasker took with the queen, sacrifices his queen, and here Bauer saw that further resistance was useless and he resigned. After rook takes, c takes, white is a total of 5 pawns up and will win automatically. What a game from 20-year-old Emanuel Lasker. That double bishop sacrifice was really very beautiful, especially as Lasker had looked so far ahead that he saw at the end of the variation there was a double attack of the queen on black's 2 bishops, which gave white a winning position. Great game from Lasker, who would become the 2nd official world champion 5 years later. Many thanks to Bent R for his generous donation on PayPal. You can see his name there at the bottom left. If you would like to support the channel, the PayPal link is in the description box of this video. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel and please leave a comment. I'll read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like this video, if you like the series from Ruy Lopez to Magnus Carlsen, then please share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.